All right, today we're going to talk about one of the most famous documents in history, the Declaration of Independence. But forget the dusty old textbook version. We're going to look at it for what it really is, the most epic breakup letter ever written.
Seriously, think about it. Have you ever had to write one of those where you have to lay it all out on the line and just say, this isn't working? You've got to give your reasons, you've got to make your case. It's a big deal.
Well, that's pretty much exactly what the American colonies did in 1776. They penned a very long, very formal letter to King George III that basically said, listen, it's over. And just so we're clear, it's not us, it's you. So let's dive into this thing.
So first up, a letter to a king. This section is all about explaining the why, because this wasn't just some angry note they slipped under his door. This was a public announcement for the whole world to see. Okay, so what is it? Officially, it's the formal document from July 4th, 1776, where the 13 colonies just flat out said, we're done being part of Britain. We are now our own independent states. It was their line in the sand. Now, here's something that trips a lot of people up. Look at the dates here. The war had actually already started in 1775, a whole year before the Declaration was even signed. So you see, the Declaration didn't start the fight, it explained why they were already fighting. It was the official justification for the whole thing.
And that justification, it was based on a totally revolutionary idea. I mean, this wasn't just about taxes anymore. This was about something much, much deeper. The core reason for the whole breakup.
And that big idea comes down to these two words, unalienable rights. It's the concept that you are born with certain rights, just because you're a human being. And no king, no queen, no government can ever take them away from you. For that time, this was an absolutely radical thought. Now, they didn't pull this idea out of thin air. They were heavily inspired by a philosopher named John Locke, who talked about life, liberty, and property. But Thomas Jefferson and the other founders made this one brilliant little tweak. They swapped out property for the pursuit of happiness. That little change says so much. It's not just about owning stuff. It's about having the freedom to build a meaningful life. And there it is. Probably one of the most famous phrases in the entire world. It just captures the whole spirit of what they were trying to do. And then comes the real kicker. They argue that the only reason to even have a government in the first place is to protect those rights. And if it's not doing its job, if it's actually violating those rights, well, then the people have the right to change it or get rid of it altogether. This completely flipped the old model of power on its head.
All right, so you've laid out your big idea, your reason for the breakup. What's next? Well, you've got to bring the receipts. And that's exactly what the next section of the Declaration does.
The colonists were basically building a legal case against the king. They didn't just say you were unfair. They listed point by point every single way they felt he had trampled on their rights.
And oh man, the list goes on and on. They were furious about being taxed without anyone to represent them in Parliament. They were being forced to let soldiers live in their houses. The king was cutting off their trade with the rest of the world and denying them something as basic as a fair trial with a jury.
So, the colonies write this incredible letter, they win the war, and they're free. End of story, right? Not even close. The legacy of this document, why it still matters today, is maybe the most important part of the story.
See, the Declaration was the why. It was the mission statement. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which came later, were the how. They were the actual rule book for the new government, designed specifically to protect all those ideas laid out in the Declaration.
Let me show you what I mean. Remember how they complained about being denied a fair trial? That was a huge deal for them.
So when they got the chance to write their own rules, boom. The Sixth Amendment now guarantees every single citizen a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury. You can draw a straight line from the complaint to the solution.
Or how about this one? The whole thing with being forced to let soldiers stay in your home. Can you imagine? It felt like such a massive invasion of privacy.
And what happens? Well, they made sure that could never happen again. The Third Amendment specifically forbids it. It shows you just how personal these grievances were and how determined they were to fix them.
And the impact of this thing just kept spreading. It didn't stop at America's borders. That call for freedom and self-government has echoed around the globe, inspiring countless other movements for independence and human rights. Because in the end, that's the world-changing idea at the heart of it all. Not a government that rules over people, but a government that serves the people and protects their rights. And that idea, born way back in 1776, leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. They defined what freedom meant for them back then. So what does it mean for you, for me, in our world today? What does that pursuit of happiness look like now? It's something we're thinking about.